Well, it's a Thursday night here in my corner of the world, which means auto repair. That's pretty well every night that doesn't already have plans. And today we're working on a 2011 Ram 1500. It's the 4.7, I think, V8, the small V8. Your parts store is going to ask you that if you're getting brakes for sure. Rear wheel drive, doesn't have the 4-wheel drive. Apparently they didn't have very many of those. That's what we're working on. Listen, I don't make these videos to give you the links and make all the money off those. I just make them so my kids can see someday what Dad was up to. But speaking of my kids, my teenage daughter reminded me, hey Dad, you get 400 more people that click the red button and you could maybe buy a coffee once a year courtesy of YouTube. So if this helps you, click that and subscribe and help a guy get a coffee. And well, if it doesn't, click it and then you can heckle every time you hate my video. Anyway, we're gonna do some brakes. I'll show you. I've never done them before. So this is not an instructional video. This is us discovering it together. Hopefully it's like, well, if this random knucklehead on the internet can do it, so can I. You can probably do it. I mean, I don't know. I don't know you, but we'll show you real quick. Obviously, you got to get your wheels off, so jack your vehicle up. I've got jack stands in here under the axle. Lots of good videos about that. Pop your wheel off. If you're thinking, well, I don't have one of those fancy tools, that's all right. I didn't have one for years. I saved a long time to get that. Just use a bar, you're fine. Get your tire up. I throw the tire underneath the frame because then if something falls down, well, the tire's thicker than me, so hopefully I'll be fine. That's what we're dealing with. All right, I live in a place with salt. I actually know the history of this truck. My grandfather bought it new, and he looked after it. Believe it or not, it's been undercoated every year. For real. And some of you are going to be like, no, it hasn't. Well, no, yeah, it has. Got the stickers to prove it and everything, but this is what happens when you live in a salt belt. So here's what my brake calipers look like. Maybe yours look a lot better. I certainly hope so. Here they are right here. What it appears I need to do is pull this bolt and this bolt down here. Now I'm going to loosen my slide pins while I'm here before I take these off, just because it's easier. I don't know what the sizes are, but I'll tell you when I discover it here in a minute. Okay, I got mine all out, but 13/16, 3/8. That's what they were in my case. Breaker bar if you got one. One of those if you got one. Either or. And my brake pads are so far beyond gone, it's embarrassing. Meaning, this is not a brake pad. This is a backing plate. See that? And it's pretty gouged out. So if yours look like that, it's time. Actually, it was time a long time ago. So there's that. Also, while I'm in here, I think I'm gonna do my brake calipers too. Anyway, I got rotors, I got brake pads. I think it's probably time for calipers as well. That's what I'm discovering. How about you? And just for fun, some people call this a parking brake, others call it an e-brake. It's not supposed to look like that. On this truck, it hasn't worked, you know, factory in a long time, because it just wasn't a priority as it would appear. This is the source of much noise, so we're just gonna delete that, as they say. Just gonna get rid of it. Away it goes. Deleted. You need to know how to take your caliper apart when you're watching this video. These come all the way out. You can do it. Those are your slide pins right there. And they're kind of different than some slide pins you might have seen, certainly than I have. And then it separates right here and right here. So all I did was took a little pry bar and started to drop it on the ground, because, you know, working with one hand. Started to pry right here. And the bracket, it's hooked on this side, not on this side. It will just lift right off. I'll show you. It'll just lift right out of there like that. And there it is. I mean, that caliper's not in terrible shape, is it? Totally reuse that. I gotta be honest with you. I knew they were bad. Don't drive this truck a lot. Been putting it off, but they're real bad. Real bad. I hope yours don't look this bad. Now you've seen what real bad looks like. Your bracket just, you know, sitting in your lap. You should be able to just slide those off. Now in my case, the sliding took a little bit of, we'll call it persuasion. Looks like that. Anyway, you can figure it out and you just kind of finagle them off. You're reusing your caliper, which we definitely would not think of doing in this circumstance. course not. And you're gonna need to compress this piston back in. Now you can buy fancy tools for that, or you can just take an old blade brake pad, put it in there, take a C-clamp, clamp one side here and one side here, and crank it back in. So, you know, we're gonna use the fancy tool. Because I mean, don't I look like the fancy tool kind of guy to you? Working on the dirt in the yard, of course. That's exactly what I am. I knew that you could tell for sure. I am gonna change this caliper. But if I wasn't, if I was, say, stuck on the side of a road on an island in the Bay of Fundy, which has actually happened to me before, and had to use this caliper, if you spray some stuff in there, as you squish it back, it'll get you just a little more life. Like it might even get you home. There you go, squished back. Definitely not 100% ever ready to be used again. Take it off immediately. I can tell you right now, on this side, this is not 3/8, it is 7, it's 1/2 inch, it's bigger. This is the same, but this is not. Now what that tells me is somewhere along the way, Grampy had this caliper changed. And this right here, that's a hand slicer. You get tugging on something, in you go. Ask me how I know. Anyway, so this caliper is in significantly better shape, which is refreshing. The brakes are bad, but the caliper's A1. It should be clear, the brake pads themselves, like, you know, they're bad. That piece was there, so was that one, till I started manhandling them, and now it's not. But the caliper's in pretty good shape. So, you know, we need one. Okay, that's how it's gonna be. Like this one just comes right off, relatively speaking. The other one didn't, but this one does. Look at that. One hand, no pry bar. All done. And then we wind it back in, you know, C-clamp. And you know, this side looks like this because it hasn't been a priority in many years, it would appear, and that's fine. Who needs it? And some of you, it seems like a lot of bad news, and I would say, no, actually, check this out. The axle bearings, butter. And I was a little bit worried that all the noise I was hearing wasn't just rear brakes. And it was completely rear brakes, which is awesome. We don't even have to delete this on this side. Look, still good. Look at that. Isn't that great? I've been called for supper a few times, and if I don't go in, my 12-year-old son's gonna eat it all. So I'll be back. In the meantime, give it a shot. You can probably do it. I mean, I don't know you. Don't worry, I'll put it back together and you'll see what it looks like. I'm just going for supper. The video will keep going in a little bit. Okay, well, it's a new day. I changed my shirt. And you thought I wasn't going to change the caliper, didn't you? We're going to do both of them. So off with the old, on with the new. That's what today is. I'll show you how to put it together. Because I'm a bit of a parts pack rat, I squished those out. Kept those because you never know what you might need. Just took them apart. We're gonna get this ready to go back together before we crack that banjo bolt. I've already loosened it, so I know I can move it. It's good to do that before. Anyway, and then we'll swap the caliper. My new caliper, we're gonna take these out. For me, they were 12 mil. I assume just because that's the size most sets, you know, don't come with. I'm gonna take these out so we can separate the mounting bracket from the caliper itself, for the purpose of putting the brake pads in. So that'll come apart. We'll put the brake pads in that. We're gonna slide these out. They come pre-lubricated, but I'm gonna take them out and put just a little bit more on them. I'll show you that. So they just slide out. Just remove the rubber. That piece of rubber goes all the way through, remember? That's the way it's made, and so you just pull it out. I'm gonna do that with two hands. I got those just stained on the caliper box. And we're just going to take some brake lubricant, you don't need much, and just add it to them all the way around before we put them back in the rubber. It's a friggy little job, but they'll go, and then you just get them in there so they're seated and everything's sealed right on the end like that, and like that, and that part's good to go. Now brake pads. My calipers came with these clips. If they didn't, I would have to, you know, save the old ones, or choose to not use them. Notice they're not symmetrical. They got a long side here, short side here. They do go on a certain way, and I'd love to give you a tip as to how to figure it out. Best I can tell, the long side goes away from the bolt mount. That's the only way I can figure to remember it. Anyway, get your pads in there. I found it easier to start one side in like that, and then bring the other side up, and then maneuver stuff back into place with two hands. Kind of slides in this way. I don't know if you're supposed to or not, but I'm gonna put some of that brake lube here and here, and you know, places where stuff slides, but we'll do that. Okay, if it helps, this is your assembled caliper. Brake pads installed. These, according to a few places on the internet, torque to 22 foot-pounds. Could not find a torque spec for the banjo bolt. When we get there, we're just trying to crush the washers. The brake pad installation looks like this, and if you note that tab on the left, you see how that's seated underneath there? You can see how that one's up against the side. You can see the difference. Just note that if you took yours apart without noting that, getting it back together could be a little frustrating. So now you've seen it. This is the new caliper on. Search the internet, 120 foot-pounds is what I'm told, which seems excessive, but that's what I went with. Cannot find a torque spec for this, but my auto parts shop gave me one somewhere between 20 and 30 pounds. You just want to crush the washers, that's it. We're gonna crack this off, put the 2 crush washers that came with my new caliper, wherever I laid those, on. And then, this is the old caliper. I always do this just because it helps me visualize. If you flip that down this way, you'll see that the line's coming out to the back, and it's gonna go on right there. I don't know if you can see that or not. My mating surface was pretty bad. This is the side that mates right there. And I just took a flat screwdriver and a wire brush, and we cleaned it up pretty good. The crush washer will make up the rest. Now, of course, that's gonna be well gravity bled into an approved recycling container. Yeah, it's ready to go on. So we'll put a crush washer on this side, another crush washer on this side, bolt through both of them, and it's gonna mate right there to the caliper. 2 crush washers in place. Put this in place. Everything lined up. I can't do it with one hand, but you get the point. And then we'll tighten it. There it is, all on. Everything's tight. The internet said 22 foot-pounds, 120 foot-pounds. Couldn't find a torque spec for the banjo bolt, so I went with 22 because that didn't seem too aggressive. So we're gonna do that, and when we get to bleeding the brakes, if it's not leaking, we're gonna call that good. If you know the torque specs, like if you have a factory manual, which is always the best, I don't, put it down in the stuff for other people. All right, we're going to the other side. I'm just gonna do that one up real quick, and we'll be done. If it's been helpful to you at all, hit that button. Help me earn a coffee once a year. Appreciate it. Okay, there it is, all torqued up. See what it looks like. I'm gonna bleed some brakes, and there's fancy little kits and better videos than mine, so I'm not really gonna show you. I'm just gonna do the backyard bleed. You get a friend, a buddy, in my case a kid, pump the pedal, hold it solid, crack that. When you know it hits the floor, the air stops coming, close it, repeat till there's no air bubbles coming out and into your recycling container that you are of course going to use. Something else people sometimes forget is that you got to bed your brakes in when they're done. So if you pause it, you can read this. Came with my rotors, not my rotors. Came with my rotors. There you go. All right, most of this has been boring, I'm sure, but the rest of it is kind of really boring. So I'm gonna bleed some brakes. Might show you that, might not, and then we'll sign off. Yeah, hopefully it's been helpful, and if it hasn't, well, I didn't make you waste your time. I'm just telling you, if this guy that's never done it before can figure it out, you probably can too. I wish you the best. I mean, I don't know you, maybe you can't. I don't know. There you go, those are all bled. Again, it's a 10 mil wrench. Get somebody to pump the pedal up 5 or 6 times, or you can use a fancy kit. They'll hold the pedal, you'll crack that, it'll spray into your recycling container. As you can see, that's what I did. And it'll just be a steady stream. Do that a couple times while the pedal goes to the floor until there's no air bubbles. And then I don't know if this is the right way, the last time I just crack and shut it off like that. I did this side because it's furthest from the reservoir first. And I did the other side, and you probably should do the front ones too, but I just changed my front calipers not long ago. Inevitably, somebody's gonna say, why didn't you show us on video? Well, it's hard to do with a bunch of hands. That's my excuse. And this is not an in-depth instruction video. It's an encouragement. I've got other videos. In fact, I think if you search front calipers on this truck, I did show you, but there's way better brake bleeding videos on the internet. You can find those. I just wanted to show you that if this knucklehead can do it, I mean, you probably can too. I don't know. I don't know you. But it goes and it stops. We tried it up on the jack stands. I'm going to take it for a ride, bed my brakes, and we're all done. If that helped you somehow and you made it this long into a video that's way too long and you want to help a guy buy a coffee once a year, go ahead and hit that button. I'm told by my teenager I should tell you that I appreciate that. So consider yourself told.